Alright, today we are starting 4.6, which is solving inequalities using multiplication and division. Our learning goal today is I can write and solve inequalities using multiplication and division. So the warm-up we're going to go over in class on Thursday. Yep, Thursday. So this should be completed. So when I come around to check your notes, this should be done. However, we are going to go over the answers on Thursday. All right, so what we've learned already, we learned earlier this chapter that if I have an equal sign, I draw my line down the equal sign, and then anything next to a letter means that I'm multiplying. So I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to divide by 8 on both sides. So x equaled 4. And then when we had a letter and then a number below it, we learned that this means division, so to get rid of it, we are going to multiply by that number on both sides. And that leaves us with W equals 13 times 5 is 65. So we can solve inequalities the same way that we solve equations. You should be following along with the video notes and copying them down on your own note sheet. And remember, you can pause the video at any time if you need time to write down whatever it is that I'm saying, because I am talking a little bit fast. All right, so we use the inverse operation to get the variable by itself. So just like we did before, we're going to draw our line down the inequality. And then we're multiplying, so the opposite would be divide by 4 on both sides. 4 divided by 4 cancels out. So that leaves us with x equals 4. The 16 divided by 4 is 4. Except it's not equals. We have to use our inequality symbol. And so our inequality is x is greater than 4. So using these steps, let's solve example 1. So I'm going to draw my line down the inequality. Right now, I have a number, I have x divided by 5. So to get rid of 5, I'm going to undo it by multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by 5 on both sides. These cancel, and that leaves us with just an x on that side. We keep our inequality the same, and then negative 3 times 5 gives us negative 15. So just like when we graphed in our last topic, we have open or closed circle. There's a line underneath my inequality, which means that it is going to be a closed circle. And since my x is on the left, my inequality is pointing to the direction that it should go in. So it is telling me to go to the left. So I have negative 15 on my graph. It is a closed circle, and I am going to go to the left. So I want you to complete the 4 triads, and then we are going to compare your answers with mine. All right, so for number 1 and divided by 3, that means we have to multiply by 3 on both sides. 1 times 3 is 3, and then we keep our inequality the same, so it's n is less than 3. Because my variable is on the left, it is pointing the direction that my graph is going, and so my graph needs to also go to the left because less than goes to the left. Over here we have m divided by 10, and so we need to multiply by 10 on both sides, and we get negative 5. My dog is growling. And so negative 5 is less than or equal to m, but because m is on the right, that means that my graph goes the opposite direction that it's pointing. So even though it looks like it's a less than, because my variable is on the right side, that means that my graph is going to go the opposite direction. So it's actually going to go in the greater than direction. For number 3, we have 2/3 times p, and so we are going to multiply by the reciprocal. We multiply by the flipped fraction, so we multiply on both sides 3/2. That cancels out everything next to p, and that leaves p by itself. And then -3 times 3 is -9. 2 times 1 is 2. So we get -9/2 is greater than p. But you'll notice p is on the right side again. So my graph is going to go in the opposite direction. So it looks like it's greater than, however, we're going to go in that less than direction to the left because my p is on the right side. Over here we have 4/3 times x is greater than or equal to 8. So again, we multiply by the reciprocal, 3/4. That cancels everything out except my x. And then 3 times 8 gives me 24. 1 times 4 gives me 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6, so it's actually x is x is greater than or equal to 6. And because x is on the left side, it is pointing to the direction that it needs to go, so it's going to go to the right. All right, so now we're going to solve using division. So again, I draw my line, and right now I have 6 times x is greater than -18. And so I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides, and I get x by itself, because those cancel, is greater than -3. So I have -3. This is going to be an open circle because there's not a line under my inequality. And then my graph is pointing to the right, and because my inequality has my variable on the left, my inequality is also pointing in the direction it needs to go. So x has to be greater than -3, so every number above it. So like I said, this was an open circle, and it's going to the right. So again, you're going to do the try-its, and then you're going to compare your answers with mine. So we have 4 times b is greater than or equal to 2. So I have to divide by 4 on both sides to get b by itself. And so that leaves us with b is greater than or equal to 1/2, because this simplifies down to 1/2. So that's how I got the 1/2. B is on the left, so that means that my inequality is pointing in the direction it needs to go. So B needs to be greater than 1/2, so it's going to be everything to the right of 1/2. 12k is less than or equal to -14, so divide by 12 on both sides. -24 divided by 12 gives me -2. K is less than or equal to -2. So this is pointing to the direction it needs to go because K is on the left. So it should be everything below -2. I'm going to divide by 2.5 on both sides on number 6. And that actually gives me -6. So -6 is less than Q. And so because Q is on the right side, my inequality needs to go the opposite direction. So it has to go everything above -6. -6 has to be the smallest number that I'm allowed to have. So whenever we divide or multiply by a negative, we have to flip our inequality. So for example, in number 1, we're going to draw our line, and I have -3 times x, so I have to divide by -3. Since I divided by a negative on both sides, these cancel, and I have x, but because I divided by that negative, my inequality is going to flip directions, and then I'm going to have -4/3. So I'm at -4/3, open circle, and my inequality is a greater than sign, so it's going to go to the right. So let's do that one more time. So now I'm going to draw my line. I have to multiply by the reciprocal because it's a fraction. So by -2/3 on both sides. These cancel, and I have n, but I multiplied by that negative on both sides. And so it flips my inequality to the other direction. And 6 times 2 is negative 12 over 3. So n is greater than or equal to negative 4. So I have negative 4, close circle, and it's going to go to the right. All right, you are going to do the try-its on your own and then compare it to mine. All right, for number 7, you'll notice we've multiplied by a negative 3 on both sides. So my inequality flips. It's an open circle going to the left because x is less than 12. On number 3, we had to multiply by that negative 2 on both sides because this is negative. To get rid of it, we had to multiply by a negative. And that flipped my inequality to go to the opposite direction. However, you'll notice that my y is on the right, so that means my graph goes the opposite way. That one's a little tricky. All right, on number 9, I didn't have to multiply by a negative because this, what's next to my m, is positive. Since I didn't multiply by a negative, my inequality stays the exact same as it was before. So negative 10 is greater than or equal to m, and my m is on the right side, which means that it's going the opposite direction on my graph, so I need to go to the less than way. Because m has to be the smallest number, so that means it has to be below negative 10, so all of these numbers. On number 10, we multiplied by a negative. That flipped my inequality. And I get h is greater than or equal to 20, and h is on the left. So my inequality is going the correct direction, so it should be pointing to the right. All right. All right, so for the word problem, you'll notice that it says the word descends. That means that it's going downward, so that's going to be negative. So we have negative 37.5 meters per minute, but we don't know how many minutes, so I'm just going to put an X there. And it says that the shipwreck rests on the ocean floor at an elevation deeper than 3,810 meters. So if it's deeper than that, that means that I'm going to have a greater than or equal to sign. Oh, nope, just greater than negative 3,810. And now I can solve this. So I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to divide by negative 37.5. I divided by a negative, so that flips my inequality the opposite direction. And so I have x is less than 101.6 meters. So this is my answer. All right, I am now done with the notes, so now you get to go ahead and work on your practice. So for the rest of the time, you're going to work on your practice. Whatever's not finished is homework. I will be checking your notes in class the next time I see you, and I will be checking whether or not you actually watched the video. Obviously, if you hear this part, you know that you did. And your homework or practice, and I'm going to make sure that is also completed. So the rest of the time is yours to work on that.